Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pete CD Vinyl World. I have not done a video in a while for a number of reasons. Usually, I try to get out like one a week, but it's been a while since I had one out. So I wanted to continue today with a series of favorite albums from starting from 1974 to current. So I'm up to the third year now, which is 1976. And the reason why I haven't done a lot of videos is I've sort of gotten bored with the whole vinyl community thing because my videos were mostly about music in general, not just vinyl and talk about this and that. And really, I don't buy a lot of reissues or new stuff in general. So a lot of those videos that people make are about this reissue and this that. I usually prefer the original copy of something unless it's something that's never been on vinyl before or whatever. Um, so I still talk about a lot of CDs too. So that's another thing. Just busy with other stuff, but hopefully starting now, get some more videos out because my channel's more about like talking about the music in general. Obviously, have to talk about vinyl and CDs if you're gonna talk about music in general, but that's the reason why I haven't made a lot of videos. But hopefully now I'll start again. Anyway, back to 1976. There's a lot of have a lot of albums here because I think we're getting into the best period of music here. 74 through the early 80s. So let's get started. I have a few that I had to actually borrow the CDs from my son because I didn't have physical copies of them. But first one's Thin Lizzy Jailbreak. Not the biggest Thin Lizzy fan, but this one is definitely one of their solid albums. I think they're kind of actually an overrated band, if I. But yeah, this one is really solid. Emeralds being probably the best track on here, I think. This is one I used to have on vinyl when I was a kid and always liked it. AC/DC, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. I'm not the biggest AC/DC fan. In fact, if I was going to listen to any of their stuff, it'd probably be like the three albums that no one ever talks about, like For Those About to Rock, Flick of the Switch, and Fly on the Wall, because no one ever talks about them. All their stuff, all their other hits are sort of overplayed, but and I'm not the biggest fan of the Bon Scott era, actually. I like it, but it's nothing where I'm going to say, hey, well, I'm going to put on an AC/DC album. If I hear it, okay, great. But like I said, this is one I had when I was younger, so I've always liked that one. Steely Dan, The Royal Scam. Have to include every Steely Dan album in these year retrospective videos. This is the one right before Asia, so they're getting more towards that jazz sound. Kid Charlemagne is probably the best known song on here. But surprisingly, there's not a lot of other well-known songs on here besides maybe Don't Take Me Alive or The Fez. Haitian Divorce is on here, but overall, really good album. Billy Joel Turnstiles. I don't have a lot of Billy Joel albums, but this one in particular I think is really good. It's got some of his best songs: Say Goodbye to Hollywood, Summer Highland Falls, Angry Young Man, Miami, 2017. So I think Billy Joel's, a lot of his music, especially his 70s stuff, has not like aged particularly well. I think his ballads are pretty schmaltzy and stuck in the time. I think his music actually got better starting in like 1980, where he went away from that sort of lounge singer. But this is one of the better ones, I think, anyway. Okay, so moving on. And like I said, there's a lot here. So start off with Sammy Hagar 9 on a 10 scale. So this is actually his first solo album. A lot of people think the self-titled album or the Red album is his first album. That's actually his second album. This is his first album. And it's got a lot of his well-known early songs like Urban Gorilla, Young Girl Blues, Rock and Roll Romeo. The thing about this era, I think his first three albums this one, the Red Album, and Musical Chairs, the record company was trying to figure out whether he was going to be a rocker or whether he was going to be a singer-songwriter. So on those first three albums, like half the songs are like hard rock songs, half the songs are sort of like almost singer-songwriter type songs, but still pretty good. A lot of people don't know that the early Hagar stuff, but like I said, still pretty good. Next up, Blue Oyster Cult, Agents of Fortune. Best known for Don't Fear the Reaper, This Ain't the Summer of Love, ETI. The rest of the album, though, is kind of lacking for me. I think ETI is one of their best songs ever, and Don't Fear the Reaper, of course. But when I did a ranking of their albums, I ranked it a lot lower than a lot of the other classic albums, just because I don't think it's as good as the three that came before it and like the three after. So, but still, any Blue Oyster Cult is recommended. I had two for David Bowie here. First one is Changes Bowie. It's like a compilation greatest hits. This is actually the 90 CD reissue, which has a lot of songs after 76 they added, but it's a good CD to start with if you're not really familiar with a lot of his earlier stuff. And then Station to Station, best known for Golden Years and TVC 15. And it's one of those weird, this is sort of his, I think it's called like this Berlin period, where he released a few albums with these produced by Brian Eno, I think, and they're more atmospheric. Kind of just cool to put on and listen to. Or you just put it on while you're doing work or whatever, but still, I don't have a huge collection of his albums. I just happen to get this one somewhere really cheap. I got two from Robin Trower. The first one is Robin Trower Live. One of those live albums that's missing a couple of key songs. Probably his best two songs, The Eagle Has Landed and Bridge of Sighs is not on here. So, but it's still a killer live album. Sounds great. And then the same year he released Long Misty Days. The title track is a great song. All these Trower albums from this era with what's his name, James Duar on vocals and bass, they all sound the same production wise and even songwriting wise, so it's hard to distinguish, but they're all good. The guitar playing's great, the singing's great. So, and you can get these all, at least around me, in dollar bins, so they're worth getting. The Tubes, Young and Rich. Sort of like a quirky, I don't want to say like art rock or conceptual band, but they have some well-known songs. Talk to You Later, She's a Beauty. Those are more of her 80s hits, but this is one that came out earlier. They were more known, I guess, for their stage show than their actual albums. But next up, Led Zeppelin, Presence. Kind of like one of my, not favorites, but I think it's a lot better than people say it is. People for years have said this is their worst album, but I would probably put this on nowadays instead of Led Zeppelin 4, because those songs are so played out and everything. But I think it's really solid. It really sounds good too, the production on this one. Johnny Winter, Captured Live. I don't think it's as good as the previous live album, but still, it sounds good. His playing live is really like ferocious. I don't know if they ever captured that on the studio versions. I have a bunch of his albums. Again, you can pick these up in the dollar bins. They're all really great and worthwhile getting. Rush. Of course, 2112, I forgot to pull that one, but they also released All the World's a Stage, their first live album. And this one is really, really live sound. Almost sounds borderline bootleg-ish. It's not, it almost doesn't sound like a soundboard recording in a way, but it still has the energy and everything. And a lot of these songs, like, you never really heard live again, like Fly By Night, whenever you ever hear them play that. But that's a great one. Judas Priest, one of their great albums, Sad Wings of Destiny. I think this is their best album of the 70s. Almost every song on here is on Unleashed in the East, but those versions to me are better. But still, this is a great album. This is their second album, but it's the one where they really become Judas Priest. Their first one is more bluesy, I think. Doobie Brothers, Taking It to the Streets. Think this is the first full one with Michael McDonald. I can't remember if it's this or Living on a Fault Line or whatever. But title track is one of their best known songs. It Keeps You Running. It's not one of their best, I don't think, but it's still pretty good, worthwhile. Any Doobie Brothers, produced by Ted Templeman. And none of these albums are in order of preference either. I'm just listening. There's so many. Next up, Genesis, Trick of the Tail. This is the first one with Phil Collins on vocals. Dance on Volcano, the title track, Ripples, Los Endos are probably the most well-known songs on here. It's funny. This one is sort of like you could picture Peter Gabriel singing on this, because I think the first couple or maybe the first three albums that Phil Collins sang lead on, his voice is very, very similar to Peter Gabriel. So they're definitely not in that pop mode yet. This is the last one with Steve Hackett too. So it's basically a classic Genesis album without Peter Gabriel. I actually, my favorite period is sort of the middle period where Phil Collins joined up until the self-titled 83 album. I like those albums. The earlier Peter Gabriel stuff I like, but I don't think it's as, great, or as everyone says. I actually think some of their albums with, like Abacab is probably my favorite Genesis album. That and Duke and this one. So. Next up, the Runaways debut album. So, of course, everybody knows Cherry Bomb, You Drive Me Wild. They did a cover of Rock and Roll from the Velvet Underground. But I prefer, a lot of people talk about this album, but I think their second and third albums are much better. Cherie Currie is only on the first and second album. That one I think is much better than this one even as well, but this, again, I was talking about reissues. I think if you get the first two, I have the first two on reissue, they supposedly sound better because the originals are a fortune. So it's another reason to get reissues sometime. But yeah, this one's pretty good. I think they're the first real female hard rock group. I mean, I guess there were some other ones. People sort of say they were before the Runaways, but they were the first ones to really do it well. Kiss, we got two. Destroyer, obviously, my first album I ever owned, and Rock and Roll Over. This is the rare teardrop edition. They also released the originals, which is a repackaging of the first three albums in a set with all goodies, tattoos, and this and that. That actually is one of their albums that was never reissued ever. I guess for various reasons, but yeah. So those are the two great Kiss albums that year. Sweet, Give Us a Wink. I think this is sort of like their trio or of harder rock albums. Best known song is Action. Def Leppard did a cover of that on there, but if you like Desolation Boulevard, you'll definitely like this one. So you can't leave out Friend Comes Alive. A lot of songs on here that people don't talk about that are really good. Like Something's Happening, that's a great song. And like sort of like Kiss, the definitive versions of his songs I think are on this, like just like Kiss Alive, like Show Me the Way, Baby I Love Your Way. and what's the other one? Do You Feel Like We Do? They're all, these are definitive versions. Jethro Tull, MU, The Best of Jethro Tull. One of these albums is a good way to start to hear their different variety of albums. Man, you can't see anything on here. You can see the track listing like way up close, but you can't really read this at all. But I believe there's a new track on here that's exclusive to this album also. It's another reason to get it. Another album that no one talks about is the first Y&T album when they were still called Yesterday and Today. The first two albums are under the Yesterday and Today name. Man, these albums are super Led Zeppelin-y, like real proto metal. 25 Hours a Day is probably the most well-known song on here. And Alcohol and Beautiful Dreamer, I would say. The thing about these first two albums, they really sound good, the production. They're on London Records. And everyone talks about Leonard Hayes' kick drum. You can really hear it on these first two albums, how it's just... But the first two albums are pretty rare on vinyl and CD. The CDs are actually worth like $100. So the vinyl is $20-$30 you could probably have to pay to get them. Another one coming up for a band that no one talks about, the Good Rats, Rhapsody in Blue. If you don't know them, they were sort of a local / obscure band from Long Island. And, you know, they were on and off major labels. This one's on Platinum Records, whatever that is, but they were on like Pasha Records, I think, after that, which is like a CBS affiliate. But their music is, like, I think they never made it because they're a mix of like hard rock, jazz, pop, all kinds of weird stuff. So one song goes from the next. Let's see, what's... The guitar player, John Gatto, was a really good, underrated guitar player. Let's see. Does It Make You Feel Good? It's probably the most well-known song on here. You can find these albums, I don't know, maybe other parts of the country, but definitely around here you can find... I have almost all of their album. I think I just need the first one, actually, which is the rarest one. But the rest of them you can definitely get in the dollar bin in, like, mint condition, so... Next up, Angel, hell of a band's their second album. Would say probably it's a toss-up between this one and the first one, which are the best. Feeling Right, The Fortune, Mirrors, Pressure Point, they're all great songs. Best known for being on Casablanca Records with Kiss. I think this is the last one with Barry Brandt. Not Barry Brandt. With Mickey Jones on bass, who I think he passed away at some point. But they were managed by a coin. They never made it big, but sort of have legendary in their own way. Almost the first, dare I say, glam hard rock band. But like, just like Kiss, like, people don't notice this, but all of their outfits are actually all different. So they had their own white costume or whatever. Wings Over America, Paul McCartney. Triple album, but somehow they didn't fit his best song on here, Junior's Farm. And I checked, they did play it on this tour, so I don't know what the hell they didn't think and didn't include it on this live album, but I don't think this sounds too good, though. If you ever watched the concert video, rock show or whatever it's called, I don't think that sounds that great either. But still, it's got all their songs. It's got a few Beatles songs he was playing at the time. Blackbird, some of the piano ballads didn't really play full. I mean, maybe Let It Be he played full band versions of. Next up, Kansas. Left Overture, best known for Carry On Wayward Son. You know, this whole album is good start to finish. I don't know if people do consider them a prog band now. That was never mentioned way back then. Because they're American, most prog bands were from England or whatever. But they have enough prog in their sound that I guess they constitute that title. But one of their best albums. Frank Zappa, Zoodle Lures. This is one of my first albums from him. Sort of a stripped down band version, just basically bass, guitar, vocals, keyboards. Has one of his best known songs, Black Napkins, instrumental, and Torture Never Stops. Also, Zoodle Lords is one of his best known. But yeah, one of the few albums he actually made on Warner Brothers. But good album. Ted Nugent, Free for All, is one of his best. I think it's probably his second best, other than the first one. This is the one that has a few songs that Meatloaf actually sings, because Derek St. Holmes had left the band intermittently while they were recording it. I think Derek St. Holmes sings. Man, what is he? He sings one song on here, and I can't think of which one it is. But anyway, just like all the Nugent albums from Tom Werman, not great sound quality as far as I can tell. But that's that. Montrose, Jump on It. I think this is their fourth album. And terrible cover. This is actually a Hypnosis album cover, believe it or not. All good songs. First time I listened to this, I was like, oh, it's not that good. But after a couple more listens, I think it's actually pretty good. It's even better than, I would say, their second album with Hagar, Paper Money. But he only put out a few. The one before this, Warner Brothers Prevents, is pretty good album too. And I think he put one more Montrose Band album out after this. The rest of them are just called Ronnie Montrose, and he put 2 albums out with Gamma. Next one is Grand Funk Railroad, Good Singing, Good Playing. And this is sort of like the album that no one talks about from them. It's they got back together in 1976 to do this because Frank Zappa produced this. And there's no, I don't think, well-known songs on here, but I think the whole thing is actually pretty good. I'm not the biggest Grand Funk fan. I think there's too much soul in their music. I know Martin Popoff doesn't like them either, and I kind of agree. I do like the We're American Band album, but that was produced by Todd Rundgren, so maybe it's because the other albums were produced by someone else. I don't really like them that much, but the production is really good. And I think he does play one song on here. I forgot which one it is, but if you ever see this, pick it up. First album from Stars. If you don't know Stars, they sort of like go along with Angel, another one of those bands that was produced by, managed by Bill Aucoin. They're on Capitol Records. They, I think, had somewhat more regional success than Angel, Cherry Baby being their best well-known song, probably. This had a couple of semi-hits. Detroit Girl, She's Just a Fallen Angel, Boys in Action. But if you like Kiss, Angel, you'll definitely like Stars. You could definitely hear the influence on their sound from Sean Delaney. A lot of their guitar licks and stuff, you're like, I know that's an Ace Frehley lick. But I think they had 4 or 5 albums in total. I think I only have 2 of them, but yeah, that one's really good. Next up, got to talk about the first Boston album. Almost every song on here, in fact, every song on here is still playing on the radio. One of those rare albums that every song is a hit. Yeah, nothing else to say on that. Band called Mott. So after Mott the Hoople left, they replaced basically Ian Hunter with another singer, Nigel Benjamin. So they released 2 albums. I think the first one is just called Mott. But man, this is like really heavy. Like you can't believe, almost surprisingly, just like Desolation Boulevard from Sweet, how heavy it is. And no one ever talks about this album either, or the other one. But I like those 2 albums better than any of the Mott the Hoople albums, really. So if you see this, pick it up. You'll be surprised. Alice Cooper Goes to Hell, follow up to Welcome to My Nightmare. Not one of my favorites, but the title track and Wish You Were Here, Guilty, they're all good songs. Got some disco-y type songs on here too, which is kind of like But the thing about this album that I'll say about the rest of the Ezrin albums that he produces, this is definitely the best sounding one. The sound is really good on this. So again, an album you can pick up pretty inexpensively, but it's pretty good. Yeah, great. And finally, Beatles Rock and Roll Music. This is a compilation of their more, rock sounding songs, straight ahead rockin' sounds. So even by the time you get to side 4, there's not too many, because once they got past, say, from Sgt. Pepper on, they weren't really a rock and roll band. So you got like Back in the USSR, Helter Skelter, Hey Bulldog, Birthday, Get Back. But everything else is pretty much from, Revolver, Rubber Soul, and earlier. The thing about this album that everyone says that these were albums really sound good. It's a double album. So it's one of the best pressed, at least US albums. And later on, I think in the late 70s, early 80s, if you ever see those Rock and Roll Music Volume 1 and 2, that's basically this album split up into 2 different albums. So anyway, that was it for 76 albums. If you like these videos, please subscribe and like. And if you have a list of your favorites, let me know, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.